Greetings and welcome to another devlog for Bad Girl Turbo. Lock and load, the 90s are back. Before we kick off, I'd like to remind you to join our Discord group, follow the game, and support us and get your chance to have a say in how the game turns out. So let's start off with the major changes which have happened in the game. First off, I've added hostages. That's quite an integral part of the game. It's going to be how players essentially earn money to buy weapons and upgrades in the gun shop in the game. Next, I upgraded the enemy AI. As it was out of the box, there were quite a lot of issues. Among others, they would, form a lemming trail and just walk towards the player, which enabled players to basically hide behind a corner, fire their gun to draw attention, and then just kill everyone with a machine gun. That wasn't very much fun. So they now stick to their corner of the level, and they behave a bit more randomly. They also seek cover once they enter combat. I've also changed the game flow quite a lot. We now have the addition of reinforcements once you've completed your mission objective. And of course we have a sort of countdown. You have a timer that appears you need to get to the elevator before the time runs out. We also have upgraded behavior for the elevator. It now supports, first off, to let out reinforcements, and it also supports the player spawning inside the elevator at the start of a level, which is how the majority of levels are going to be. Then there's a whole slew of minor tweaks which have happened. For example, there is now a main menu. It's very rudimentary, as you're going to see, but it exists, and I personally think it looks quite nice. I've made visual improvements to the skybox. Among others, I've added a depth of field and fog, which makes it look way better. I've added a suppressor that players can pick up. I've worked a lot on both of the levels, both the gym level and the first office level. Shooting enemies in the head actually causes them more damage, actually 3 times as much as hitting them anywhere else. And that is, of course, going to reward players who are a bit more skilled. I've added scoring, so when you hit enemies, when you release hostages, you actually are scored for it. Beyond that, there are additional music types, which also you're going to see in a while. There's music that plays when you're in the elevator. There's music that plays when reinforcements appear. There is music in the main menu. And as you heard in the trailer just a second ago, Tommy Froberg, our composer, has done a wonderful job on the main theme. Alright, let's take it from the top. So the first thing you're going to see here is the main menu. I've decided to add a very basic main menu where all of the options are in a nice, clearly visible bar. And it's overlaid on top of a camera panning over the game world, basically the city the game takes place in. And what you'll see here since last time is that I've added some shaders to make it look nicer. There is a depth of field shader that makes things further away from the camera more blurred, as well as a fog that makes things further away look washed out. And this basically sells the scale of the game world. This is an effect that basically makes the game world come alive. You'll see that later as I play during the night. Of course, the skybox is going to receive way more detail than it has right now. Way more buildings and various details, and there will also be a foreground city. Of course, you can see this effect here during the newsreel. The newsreel in and of itself hasn't changed at all. Here you see the starting location where the game will basically start out. The protagonist is in a gym where she was working out when the terrorists took the building, essentially. She was doing bench presses, and then they attacked. The idea is, of course, that when you start the level, there will be an audio clip where you hear basically gunshots and the terrorists, telling the hostage, "Get down on the ground, we're taking over the building," that kind of thing. The protagonist is based off of our voice actress, Sunny Terminen, who I got to know through our sound artist, Tommy Furberg, who also composed this melody. I've added a lot of props to the game environment to basically sell the idea that this is a gym and to make the whole place come alive. There should also be basically one-time audio clips of the protagonist saying, things. For example, I should get that suppressor, and yes, this is a suppressor. There are also hostages, as you can see here. These character models are just placeholders. But yeah, hostages are an addition to the game. As you can see next to the suppressor, there's a number shown, and that's the number of shots you can fire before the suppressor breaks. In the final game, the suppressor, of course, all of the gun models are currently placeholders, but when that happens, the suppressor will have a built-in digital readout. Not very realistic for the 90s, but, a sort of red dot matrix display will make it feel more 90s anyways. As you can see here, the enemies are strafing to evade being shot, and the suppressor actually makes enemies not hear you at all. The game does have a noise system, so when you fire shots, enemies will become interested, and they will come towards you. Enemy behavior is also highly modified. Enemies no longer form, lemming trails as they did before, a neat line where they walk towards basically the source of the sound, which was an issue before. Enemies also stick to their part of the level, and that's because we had an issue before where enemies would just, basically, once they'd hear you, all of the enemies from the entire level or within the distance of the sound would come towards you, and you could very, very easily just lure them towards you and just take out all the enemies, and then have a free level where you can do whatever you want, and that's not desirable. Here's another suppressor. I didn't mention it as much before, or I didn't show it in my previous video, but here's an example of the color coding. Green things, green areas contain secrets, and you can see that here as the gym sign is illuminating the computer and the desk with a green light, whereas most of the environment just has neutral yellow glow. Displayed next to the suppressor, and that's because suppressors only last a certain amount of small digital display, old style display, where players, which the objective of this level is basically to take out all 3 enemies, and that's happened now. So what you're going to see is, and here is, that an elevator has arrived with enemies and a bomb, and the player needs to get to the elevator before time runs out. And here you can see the clear influence, clear inspiration I got from Die Hard trilogy. Of course, I'm pulling my own spin on everything, so it's not an exact copy of how it was, but it's quite close. The environments are much brighter, much more vibrant, much more pleasant to look at than they were before. And I'm going to continue adding to that. And here you can see a hostage running away, and it's running down into the staircase, and that's what hostages are going to do in every level moving forward. This screen hasn't changed at all since before. What's going to happen is that at some point I'm going to add a shop to this screen where players will be able to buy additional guns, ammunition, consumables, all that good jazz. Now you can see the intro to the next level, and you can see that it's night. Now it's a bit darker than it's supposed to be, than it will be in the end. Here you can see level 2 starting, and you spawn inside the elevator that you went into in the last level, so there's continuity, and the elevator has a particular behavior. You can hear the elevator music. It's a placeholder, but the idea is inspired by GoldenEye. And you have the whole elevator behavior where the elevator closes once you leave it. That's changed since my last video. And here's the first glimpse of the second level. It's a basic office level. Most levels in this game are probably going to be variations of offices. Here's a little lobby of some company, a nice big sofa, and there's the boss's office, complete with a smoking cigarette. And a conference room. This level is very much a work in progress, but you can see what's going to happen. Those soda machines are, of course, fictitious sodas that I came up with. That's bespoke art for the game. There's a lot of bespoke art in the game. I'm going to show you another thing here. Of course, I've been working to create a lot of props that can work as cover for the player and for enemies as well, like that server, for example, that ancient noisy server. Here are some bathrooms. I actually made those for the previous version of the game, so I'm quite happy with those. I'm going to show you another thing, and that is the skybox. Here at night you can see it even clearer, that the fog and the depth of field sells the scale of the city. It really looks like one of those movies where you see, just a grid moving on into the horizon. I'm chuffed to see what it's going to look like once I add a whole bunch of extra buildings to the surroundings. And of course, this area in the foreground is going to contain much more detailed buildings and probably even some traffic moving along, just to make the whole game world come alive. So yeah, that's what I have for you for now. So what are the next steps? Well, basically I intend to test this game at a LAN that I have with friends later this July. So before I can do that, I need basic functionality to work. I need to be able to save and load a level. I need a fail state so that something happens when you die. And I need a high score screen so that the game will store high scores essentially. Then I also would like to add a feedback loop where players actually find out what they receive score for, because it's a bit cryptic as it is right now. And finally, weapons. I think there should be more weapons. I'm not sure if by next devlog I'll have the actual shop working, or I'll just, as a placeholder, allow players to pick weapons up in the environment. Anyhow, that's it for today. Please join the Discord group as I mentioned before. I would very much appreciate your input and your interest. So yeah, that's it for today. Have a great day.